You hear that sigh? Welcome back to another episode of Hangin with Mr. Francis podcast. I am your host, Mr. Francis. Yeah. Let me just adjust my mic here. So, this is episode 27. Originally, it's supposed to be a different episode, which I didn't end up releasing. But that's a topic for another day. The topic for today, though, episode 27, is the internet. Before I get into why today, of me recording this, is an important day and an important reminder. And I'm going to, as usual, try to keep this short and sweet. But before I get into it, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Bold and Wonderful Digital Art Prints. Bold and Wonderful Digital Art Prints is basically a digital one-stop shop where they provide their own designs, ideas of digital art prints that you can purchase from them for a very affordable price, and you can have it printed, not necessarily through them, but you purchase the artwork, send it to a print shop or print it yourself, whichever works, and that's it. And I believe they will announce soon or be releasing some customizable artwork that they're currently working on, as what I've heard. So if you ever need to check out their things, you can simply go to boldandwonderful.ca, which will take you directly to their Etsy store, as they do sell through Etsy.com. So again, visit boldandwonderful.ca. And now we're going to continue. So, episode 27, and I named this one The Internet. And the reason why I do is it's in regards to the internet. I will not at any time through this episode mention the name of the company that provides the particular telecommunications and internet service, everything digital, has had one of those down times. Let's put it that way. And woke up today to this happening. Like, the crazy thing is, the last time we had an outage, I think it happened, I don't know what the reason is why it tends to happen early in the morning. Some may say it's because they're doing updates, because you usually do updates at 2 a.m. Eastern time, or whatever late night, early morning situation. So maybe that was the cause. But it always happens at the beginning, the crack of dawn. It always tends to happen. And what is happening is, and I'm gonna build this up to tell why this is something that is very troubling, and people need to understand that this is very important because it plays a big role in what is to change in the near future. I mean, a lot of things have already changed now, but when it starts to affect on a very wide scale than what is happening now, like, even though this is a very wide scale because it's just one provider, but if this was to happen to all providers, we're basically screwed. So, to continue, it happened where this situation has taken out mobile service, so you can't make calls, can't receive calls. You cannot go on your mobile internet, and the home internet is down. And any other providers that piggyback through this particular provider. So, one of the main things that uses these services, which is a very concerning thing, but right now we're good in a weird sense. And what I'm speaking of is debit machines, or I can't even think of it, point of sale, or somewhere, whatever you use to gain access to purchases through tapping of a credit card, or I'm not sure if the credit cards are affected, I've seen reports that it's not, which is weird. But debit machines, obviously, because they use services through the internet. So with the whole world going digital and continuing to go digital, this is going to have a big impact when situations like this happen. Some stores have chosen, on retail or other corporations or whatever it may be that uses this service, have chosen, so let's say on the retail aspect, have chosen to close their stores. Or some are able to still function. They just have to say that, hey, our debit machines and so forth is not working. However, we take cash. You know, the whole saying that cash is king, still king, or cash is king. And it is. However, with the growing of change in this world, I personally believe, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, that cash is eventually going to be obsolete. It's inevitable. For those who think that cash is going to continue, you're making a big mistake. Now, really and truly, I've said this multiple times. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. It's not if it's going to happen. It's going to happen, but it's just when is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? When is it, like, it's just, it's inevitable. And this should be a wake-up call for this front. Now, give or take, with this happening, this is a constant reminder to us in society that we're too dependent on digital things. Almost all our daily lives revolve around anything internet-based that has some form of internet connection. You know, going online to check our banking, going online to check our social media, going online to check our websites or update it. Anything that we used to at one point in life not depend on when it comes to the internet, we now depend on the internet to provide these services. And when it affects the money, you should start to worry. Because when cash is no longer available and something like this happens, and you're not able to go to the store and make any purchases, what do you think is going to happen? These stores are not going to be able to open. They're not going to be able to provide services. And this should be something not to necessarily be up in arms and worry about right now. However, you should prepare for things like this to happen on a grander scale in the near future, because anything's possible. And there's just too much power through this whole internet aspect of things. And as much as, growing up, I used to see how great the internet was, and to see where it is now and to see so many things going digital, it's like we're putting too much dependent on it. Like a lot of companies, instead of housing their files in-house, because obviously there's that cybersecurity and stuff like that, they put their trust in these other cyber companies to house their situations. But in the past, we used to have paper trail, paper documents, and so forth. Now, a lot of it is being forced onto the cloud because they say it's cheaper, having things on paper, it's more accessible and stuff like that. Yes, there is a good aspect to it. However, think about when you had your paper documents stored away in, like, let's say, a file room or whatever it is, and the only way that could get destroyed or accessed is either someone breaks in and takes the stuff, or a fire happens and everything gets burned down. But you still had control of where it is and how to access it and so forth. Now when it's on cyberspace, you kind of have no access to it, but it's there. But if some shit happens, like what's happening today, and I'm saying today because I know maybe I might not release this until I actually have a connection, But when something like this happens, you have absolutely no access to it. It's not like you can drive to the location where you have your files and go in and whatever. You literally you're cut off from it. You have no access. None. Like you have it's invisible once you have no access to it. Like it becomes just fiction. It's not real anymore. And the bridge that we've created to have access to these files, like right now I can't access anything. I mean, I have a backup phone that I have that has some service that I can use, but because not all internet services are affected by this, it's just one entity, I'm still able to access certain things, like make calls and stuff like that. But with this one gigantic entity that controls a lot of, these situations, imagine that on a grander scale, and everybody, it'll be total chaos. Now, I know a lot of people are not going to think about this because, let's be real, it's the last thing on our minds for anything to happen. But from time to time, we have situations like this that happens to remind us that this is not good. We put too much trust in these companies. We've put too much trust into keeping our things the way they are and how things have shifted. Unfortunately, that's just the way the world works and how the world is going. And I don't like it because of when situations like this happen, it makes you realize how bad and how fast this can get. Like how fast things can get bad. And it's bad. Like the fact that they would come on and say, hey, we apologize, you have no access to anything, and we don't know when we're going to get back up with this, but we will keep you posted. Meanwhile, you're freaking out because everything that you need access to is no longer accessible. And that's wild. It's very wild when you think about it. And I didn't want to talk about this, but this is something that I realize has given me the opportunity because I'm able to take a step back, because I've realized with myself that obviously on an everyday basis, you don't realize how much these things play a role in your lives when it comes to the internet, like how you are able to access almost everything. And then once that gets taken away like a snap of a finger, some Thanos shit, you realize everything is inaccessible. Like you can't access anything. And it's just like, it's almost as if you get taken back to the Stone Age and all you have is your mind and how you function on doing things, which is nothing bad. It's actually a good thing. And sometimes we need to unplug and realize that we don't necessarily need these things, but we allowed society's change over the last 1 to 2 decades to dictate that we need to have everything online and everything is going to be good. But then, like I said, from time to time, things like this happen to give us a nudge and say, hey, see, this can happen. This can really mess things up. I'm trying not to cuss because this is crazy. And this has happened before. I think it was last year, 2021. There was a situation like this that happened. But I believe it happened with a social media platform. But it also happened with an internet service as well. But the thing is that when it happened with the social... Can you imagine it happens with internet access, which then doesn't allow you to access your social media and whatever? People lost their mind when that thing went down, and now this. And then, but the thing is, it's one thing to have a social media platform go down, but when you don't have access to the internet itself, you can't make calls, you can't receive calls. It's a perfect storm for disaster. And this should really be a wake-up call. This really should be a wake-up call. And I'm going to take it for myself as a wake-up call, because it is something that has always been in the back of my mind. But now with it happening, it definitely brought something to the forefront of my mind to say, you know what? I got to start doing things a little differently. And I got to prepare. Because I think in the near future, when everything has completely gone digital, I think the last thing to just completely be eradicated, which is cash. I could be wrong, but for me, I think cash is the last thing to go fully digital, where cash is not accepted at all anywhere, and it's just strictly digital. So meaning you don't have any cash on hand, and it's not accepted anywhere anymore, because the shift in society has changed to completely digital. Then the real panic begins, because like I said earlier in the episode, that once everything goes digital and these things go down, how are you able to purchase food? How are you able to get certain things done? I can't even stress it enough. And this is not fear mongering. This was an episode for you to think. And I hope whoever's listening, whoever's taking in what I'm saying, you understand how important this is. Understand how important this is. So all you can do is prepare for the worst. Or wait, did I say that the wrong way? My bad. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That's what I meant to say. That was terrible on my end. But I'm going to end it off here. Man, how many times this shit got to happen before we start to realize, maybe it's not a good idea we put everything online and we are continuing full steam ahead to make everything just be online, and not realizing our lives revolve around the internet. Man. But anyways, that was my little thing. This wasn't meant to be the perfect episode, but I felt after a brief hiatus and then this happening, I said, you know what? I think it's time. And I had a series that I quite possibly will be creating. It's called The Tomorrow World, where this is actually part of that segment of what I'm going to be working on. I want to work on it, but then there's so many things happening I haven't able to. I've had things written down and stuff like that. It's going to be a mini series where I touch on a few serious topics, and this is actually one of them. And it's just so ironic that maybe this happening is just encouraging me, maybe I should do this so I can speak on certain things to get the gears in people's minds working, because we're at an inflection point right now where we need to realize the important things and be awakened to what possibilities of what could happen, and what are things that are going to happen, and things that have already happened. But yeah, wake up, people. Thank you for tuning in for episode 27 of Hangin with Mr. Francis podcast. Again, I'm your host, Mr. Francis, and this episode again was called The Internet. Very fitting, and I will definitely in the near future speak about this. It's definitely not over yet. Things are just beginning. So I appreciate anyone and everyone who's listened to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.